The Cowboys selected Jake Ferguson in the fourth round of the 2022 NFL Draft. What's his upside and what role might he play right away for the team? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And today's episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On listeners get $50 off $500. Just make sure you use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, we're going to be diving into the day 3 picks for the Cowboys. But how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Had a nice little deep dive to kind of further learn about some of these guys, and I'm excited about a couple of them and what they can do for the Cowboys this year.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it because I know you guys are interested in our thoughts. Let's start with Jake Ferguson, tight end from Wisconsin. The Cowboys took him in the 4th round. We had an idea that the Cowboys were kind of hunting a tight end 3rd, 4th round. We thought maybe Jeremy Ruckert, maybe Cade Otton, Charlie Kohler went one pick ahead of the Cowboys, but they landed with Jake Ferguson. What are your thoughts on the player after having a few days to watch him?
Well, it's interesting. I think he's a little bit more athletic than I anticipated, or at least my first viewing. It just feels like his ability to kind of separate at the top of routes, and frankly, the one thing that I guess I just didn't notice the first few times watching him was he has some ability after the catch. He has an ability to kind of swim over and make the first guy miss and get a couple extra yards. I think that the thing that we're seeing here is that he's being kind of touted as a blocker, as a guy who could come in, and I mean he's not a trained killer yet or anything like that, but he's more than solid blocker coming into the tight end position. But I think that the thing that really provides value for what he can do is that he's a very solid two-way player. I think, like you said, he can block, but he can also create separation. He can also catch the ball. He has really good hands, so he has value, I think, right away. Being in a 12 personnel with Schultz, and it still doesn't tip off the formation. It's not quite like putting Sprinkle in there, and it's not that Sprinkle can't catch a pass, but I think this guy might have a little bit more upside there as a pass receiver, and it just puts another body out on the field in 12 personnel that is going to be able to catch the football, going to be able to be a get in the way blocker, because that's basically all tight ends are nowadays. And do those jobs at a level that is not going to get his team killed. I think right away as a rookie, and then where does he develop from here? I think that's really the question I have after watching him is where does he go from here, and how much better can he get?
Yeah, a couple background things on him. He's Barry Alvarez's grandson, I believe, which is pretty cool because every time that he would catch a touchdown, they would show Barry sitting in the press box.
I watched a 30-minute video of all of Jake Ferguson's catches
throughout
his career. Yeah. And I swear to God, the first 10 catches of his career, the announcer mentioned, man, his grandfather must be excited. By the way, his grandfather's Barry Alvarez. And it's just like, it's the point that all the announcers were hitting every single time he made a catch.
Yeah, that's the big thing. All right, let's talk about the athleticism here, because I think this is really interesting. He's not straight line fast. Like I think was a 4.82 was the 40-yard dash, 4.81 at the combine, 4.73 at the pro day. So he's probably a 4.8 athlete. Now, the good thing here is the 10-yard split is really good. 1.61 according to the electric timing at both the combine and the pro day. That puts him in like the 90th percentile. However, I saw a couple different people from NFL Draft Scout, which is like a database of NFL scouts where they put all this information in, had him at 155 hand held, which puts him at like the 98th percentile. That's more important for a tight end than a 40-yard dash because most tight ends aren't running 4 yards. It's about how quick do you get off the line of scrimmage, right? That's really good. And then on top of that, the 3-cone, which is one of the most important drills for a tight end. How quickly can you get it in and out of your breaks? 703 at 250 pounds. That's very good as well. I think that's an 86th percentile. So the two athletic testing drills that I care the most about, he's really good at.
Yeah, and I would even say that if you go and watch his tape, like you mentioned, he ran a 4.81 at the combine. I think you said a 4.73 or 4.71 at his pro day. To me, he's close on tape. He looks closer to a 4.71 athlete than
Probably
a
because of the 10-yard stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you notice, I will say, I watched that same 25-minute video from the Big Ten Network on all of his receptions. You can count on your hands how many receptions he has down the middle of the field over like 12 yards, right? He's just not really a seam stretcher.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that part of that was some of the quarterbacks that he had on those teams. But yes, you're right. They're not necessarily. He's not like a seam buster. He's not like what you imagine Blake Jarwin doing.
No.
This guy, to me, like really is a great fit as a tight end too. He's not going to be your primary target. He's going to be a guy that you like the mismatch that he probably will create with whoever is the defender that is going to be put on your tight end to, right? You feel like he can at least get open enough to catch a pass and fall forward for a first down. I think that that's what this guy is. He's a useful player who can catch the ball, can be a reliable receiver. I mean, he's got very, very good hands. He's the guy that when Dak gets all the progressions, he's the last one and he's there and he may be open for just a second and maybe you get like a 6-yard gain to get a little bit of something when there's nothing else there. That's the kind of role I think he is. He'll come in specific packages, be a blocker, maybe be a pass protector in protection schemes where you need to leave the tight end in. And then sometimes he'll go out as a pass catcher. And when he does go out in those instances, he has enough athleticism to present himself open for a window and then catch the ball when it's delivered to him.
I asked a long-time Wisconsin, let's just say somebody that works for the team, about Ferguson.
Was it Barry Alvarez?
No, it wasn't Barry. He said, this is the thoughts overall on Ferguson. He said, I'm reading the word for word. He's good. He's a bit limited athletically. The thing with him is that people got really excited about him as a freshman, but he's basically been the same guy every single year. He's limited. He has limited athleticism, but he's a good player. He's experienced 4-year starter who came from a run-first offense, projects as a high-end tight end too.
Exactly.
That's kind of what we said.
I think that's where he can grow into. Is he's already a tight end 2. I think he can grow into a nice tight end 2 eventually, but there's not a ton of room. There's not a ton. You can see his ceiling from here.
I think he's pretty polished right now. Like there was a couple routes that I sort of noticed, like on a 3rd and 6, he's coming back to the football to beat the safety to the ball, and I think he can get better as a blocker. I think he could actually get a little bit stronger. He sometimes will make nice plays after the catch. Sometimes he'll kind of juke a little bit and guys will run past him and stuff, but that's not really his game. But I think why I was a little bit more down on the pick is I was hoping that the Cowboys would draft a tight end with one trait that you can really hang your head on, whether that's elite athleticism or an elite blocker or somebody that's really good after the catch. And that's just not Ferguson. He's kind of one of these good at everything, great at nothing tight ends.
That's a trait. Versatility is a trait. And you're right. You're not right. He doesn't have a dominant trait. He's not a speedies guy. He's not, you don't really see the kind of offensive tackles as tight ends anymore that's going to bury folks. He's just very polished. He's a very experienced tight end. He's played, like you mentioned, he's a redshirt freshman and started pretty much right away at Wisconsin. He played 3 years. He's played a ton of snaps. I think it was something like 1,300 snaps total in his career as an inline blocker. That's a lot, So he has a ton of experience doing things that an NFL tight end would do. That's why I think he's a very high floor player. And actually, that's why I kind of like him is because, look, I mean, you could go and draft Charlie Kohler. You could go and draft some of these other guys. And I think that they would be more useful receivers, more useful playmakers down the road. But what you get out of Jake Ferguson is instead, and not that this is better or worse or anything, this is just a different thing, right? What you get instead with a guy like Jake Ferguson is a guy who's already ready to be plugged in that tight end 2 spot. He has a ton of experience. You're not going to ask him to do a lot, but whatever you ask him to do, he's going to do well. And I think that sort of valuable role player that can help you have that kind of versatility to play more 12 package personnel stuff. I think that has value, and I think Jake provides that in a way that you may not have been wondering if you could do that with some of these other tight ends if you drafted them, because they may not be ready to quite see the field yet.
My comp for him, Cowboy fans probably aren't going to like this, but it's Anthony Fasano, who didn't have a great career with Dallas, but actually ended up having a really nice tight end career with Miami and Kansas City later on in his career.
And that's, I mean, again, like Fasano is a good example, because I think Fasano, it took a little while to kind of develop into the tight end that he was, and that's why he didn't have a great career with the Cowboys, but he did have a long career. I think that's the thing. They drafted Fasano to be a high-end tight end 1 eventually. The difference here with Ferguson is that I don't know that there's that expectation immediately. I think right now they want him as a tight end 2. We'll see what happens with Schultz, but if Schultz leaves, I don't know that the necessary plan is to plug this guy in as tight end 1 right away. I think he is, he has a role, and I think he has a very useful role, and I think he's going to be ready to fill that role from day one. I just don't know how much further above that role he's going to get.
I don't disagree. All right, let's take a quick break so we can tell you guys about Blue Nile. Are you looking for some fine jewelry for that special woman in your life, but you're having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every single budget. On BlueNile.com, you can easily navigate through thousands of fine jewelry options at every single price point. And this Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Cowboys listeners will get $50 off $500. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day. Make sure you're using promo code Locked On. Again, promo code Locked On. Plus, every single order is insured and it ships free. Go check out BlueNile.com today. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys' first 5th-round pick. We've got quite a few to get through. And talk about Matt Waletzko, offensive tackle from North Dakota. Not North Dakota State, but North Dakota. Landon, what are your thoughts after getting a couple days to research him and think about him?
I mean, first of all, anybody who's got North Dakota tape, please hit me up, because there's not a ton out there. I was able to watch. I actually was able to find the Senior Bowl practices and kind of go back and rewatch some of those, which was great. First thing I wrote my notes were, what a ball of clay. Like, I mean, this guy is like, if the idea is that you have, an impressive marble block that's been put out in front of a sculptor, this is an incredible piece of marble to start with. He is long. I think it's 36 plus inch arms, which is just ridiculous. Extremely tall player with skinny arms and legs. He looks like a basketball player. I mean, he looks like an NBA player. Honestly, the first thing I thought when I saw him was, do you remember that player from Arkansas? I can't remember. He played with a bunch of different teams in the NBA. Big Country, or Big Country Reeves? Yep. Yeah, he kind of reminded me of Big Country. Just kind of looking at him at first, but he's just so skinny. He has tons and tons of room to grow. And I mentioned, he's already 6'7.5" and 312 pounds. He could easily add 30, 35, 40 pounds like on that frame. Easy. Because he's so skinny. His arms and legs are just like sticks. He's incredible mover at his size. Like I said, he looks like an NBA player in the sense that he's very nimble despite being so lanky. Raw as sushi that's still in the sea. I mean, his skills are. I wrote that he looks like a guy imitating someone doing a pass set. It doesn't look like it's natural to him. It doesn't look like it's something that he's comfortable with yet. It feels like it's something that he's being told to do, and it's not quite second nature with him. Despite looking awkward, he displays so much good flexibility in his pass set. He isn't just some big guy that they put out at tackle. He clearly has some physical traits that are going to translate to tackle. His natural gifts and the funny thing is his natural gifts and like the flexibility, his length, and all that, it, combined with his kind of shaky technique, it makes for really interesting situations. There are times when his technique is horrible and he wins the rep because he's just so long and so quick. And then there are times when his technique is correct, but he loses the rep because he doesn't exactly understand what he's doing with the technique. He bends too much, which is to be expected because he's not patient, and it's probably because he knows that he is not strong enough, and so he's trying to constantly. It's that thing with tackles that happens all the time. When they aren't strong enough, when they aren't confident in their core strength, they try to reach to get their hands on the defender first because they think that by initiating contact early, they're going to win the rep. But what ends up happening is that they bend over and then they get completely, burned around the side. Where does he win? He's an explosive mover with long arms, and unanswered questions are, do the Cowboys have the time to develop this guy, the amount of time that this guy's development is going to require? Like what is the mechanism for keeping a guy like this on the roster long enough to develop him to a point where he could become a useful player?
Okay, so this is how the Tyler Smith pick actually helps him a little bit.
Yes.
So last year, they carried 4 offensive tackles on the roster between Tyron Smith, Lyle Collins, Terrence Steele, and Ty Nsekhe, right? So they had 4 tackles. This year, going into camp, they have Tyron Smith, Terrence Steele, and Josh Ball. And that's really it, right? And the idea is that if Tyron goes down, Tyler Smith is going to slide out the left tackle, right? So you actually do have a 4th tackle on your roster. He's just going to be starting at guard. So if you want to keep somebody like Waletzko on your 53-man roster and not expose him to other teams, practice squads or whatever, you can have him be, on your roster and be that 53rd guy, just not have him active on game days. I think that's the strategy here and probably the plan. But you're right. He's not ready to play. Like he needs at least – I think at least a year before you can consider him the swing tackle, and probably 2 years. But the good thing is we've seen developmental projects like this work before. I think about Alejandro Villanueva, who the Steelers played at left tackle for almost a decade. He was in the Army, same thing, 6'8", 315-pound guy that was just a great athlete that they taught him how to play the position. So I do think it can happen. I should also mention, 3rd longest wingspan ever for an offensive lineman, 5th longest arm length ever for an offensive lineman, plus 99 percentile athleticism. You rarely see that combination together where a guy is big, long, and athletic. That's why there's a lot to like here, despite very average and very underdeveloped tape.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point about, the kind of coherent plan that the Cowboys have. I think we'll discuss that a little bit more with Damone Clark. I think that there's a very coherent plan there, and I think that you're completely right with Let's Go. Right, this is a situation where, because of the way that the Cowboys have constructed their roster, because of what they've got in Tyler Smith, there is a means to kind of hold him onto the roster. I think if you go that route, you're gonna likely see Matt Waletzko take some snaps this season, and it may not be pretty right away. But I think that there is a possibility that if injuries happen, that he may have to come in like in game for a couple of snaps, just because he's on the roster. And if you're bringing him on the roster, then there's a chance that injuries happen that he will get to play. The best case scenario would be everybody stays healthy, or at least doesn't get hurt long term. And Let's Go basically is your weekly inactive. That would be best case scenario. And then hopefully by this time next year, you've got a much more developed player, a guy that has actually gotten a chance to put some strength onto that body, and then suddenly he can compete for that swing tackle spot and hopefully maybe a starting position down the road.
I think he's really going to take Isaac Alacon's spot, the international player that they had last year, whether that's on the 53-man roster, whether that's as a developmental project. He just has way more tools, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if they moved Alacon to guard at this point.
Yeah, probably.
They're looking like they want more of these bigger guards, and maybe that's what they do. They looked at Alacon as a guard a little bit last year too, so maybe that's what happens.
The good thing about Waletzko is he's improved pretty significantly over the last 3 years. He was invited to the East-West Shrine game. He was there for a day before he got to call up to the Senior Bowl game. So, and then he comes to the Senior Bowl, and listen, the technique is all over the place and that kind of stuff, but he didn't really lose all that often. There was a couple times where he got Boy Mafi on the ground, and I mean, maybe you could call holding on a couple of those, but I didn't think the jump in competition looked overwhelming for him, at least.
There were a couple reps against Ebukake that I thought, and actually those were the reps that I was talking about where where I mentioned it looks like he did everything wrong, but still won the rep, because he was just able to keep in front of Ebukake long enough to kind of push him out of the way. And then there were times when his pass set looked as good as it could, and he just got completely destroyed. So, I think that's, this is Ebukake is a guy that's a top 2 round, maybe even a first round if things had fallen right, pass rusher. So that's not surprising. I think that if anything, it shows you that his physical tools are such that even with a limited skill set that he has, every once in a while he can win a rep against reputable NFL pass rushers. That's a hell of a good starting point for a developmental tackle.
So just say he weighed in at 312 pounds, but like it was a struggle for him to get to that weight. Like early on, I think he was like 270 when he arrived in North Dakota, and he's just been trying to put on weight. So that's why I think, man, if you can get him 2 years where you don't have to play him and you can get him into a weight program and you work on his technique, I think his body could look completely different, 2 years from it. Listen, we saw this happen with Terrence Steele a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Nobody expected Terrence Steele to be able to come in and play, and nobody wanted him to play, and he struggled. And then we saw after a year of being in the weight room, kind of eating right, all of a sudden look like a much better player. I'm not predicting that Waletzko is going to develop like that, but you can see what can happen if you get the guy into the right strength and conditioning program. We'll see. In the 5th round, why not? Why not gamble on somebody like this? If it doesn't work out and you cut him, we're not losing sleep over a 5th round pick. It's really not a big deal.
Absolutely, especially with the surplus of 5th round picks the Cowboys had. I loved this pick. It's an athletic upside at a position, one of the money 5 positions. I'd do this all over again every day. Yep.
All right, let's take one more quick break so we can tell you guys about Built Bar. Summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some snacks for the go. Built Bars are the absolute perfect snack. Whether you're on a family vacation, whether you're golfing, whether you're going on a walk, whatever you need, Built Bar is there for you. Built Bars have only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. Compare that to your average candy bar that has 240 calories and dozens of net carbs, and it's not even a contest. So go to Built.com to get all of your delicious flavors, including banana cream, raspberry double chocolate, and more. Again, Built.com, promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Landon, let's talk about Damone Clark, a linebacker from LSU. We've spent a couple shows talking about him, but let's specifically talk about how he fits into this Cowboys defense, because I think everybody knows the story by now. Likely a 2nd, maybe 3rd round pick, early 3rd round pick if he doesn't have the spinal surgery. Highly athletic, led the SEC in tackles last year. But how does he fit into the Cowboys' long-term plans?
Well, first, let's talk about kind of what I had teased a little bit earlier about the kind of coherent draft plan here. I think that this draft selection combined with Sam Williams is a step towards truly freeing Micah Parsons. You draft 2 guys who play the kind of 2 positions that Micah plays, and now you've got talent, young talent at each one of those positions, so you feel like you can move Micah back and forth without really fearing a huge loss at either spot, right? So imagine a year from now, and our 3rd down package is, DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons on one end, and then Jabril Cox and this guy Damone Clark as your 2 linebackers. Man, let's go. Like that's a group of really athletic, well-moving linebackers that can, cover. And let's say you want to change it up. There's a special guy out there that you want Parsons to be on. You move Parsons back out to the linebacker, and then you put Sam Williams down there. I think that, to me, the combination of those 2 picks really helps your young superstar defensive lineman, linebacker, defensive player, whatever you want to call Micah Parsons. And so I think that's why I really loved getting this pick, because to get a guy like this guy in the 5th round was incredible value. Where does he fit? I mean, I think that this guy, if he can come back healthy, he can come in and be that Mike linebacker that you need in
He's the
nickel
middle linebacker,
situations.
right? He's got
Yeah.
great size.
Yeah, he's got really great size. He's not a huge, none of these linebackers are nowadays. He's not huge as a take-on guy. He's got very kind of inconsistent play there. But man, I mean, he moves so fast. He gets into his drops quickly, and he clicks and closes downhill very fast in the pass game. He's a very easy mover for being a guy who's 6'3", 235 pounds. Basically he has only experience as from what I saw as an off-ball linebacker, but that's basically where you're going to be playing him. His feet are always moving, but somehow always end up planted when he needs to generate power. He's violent. He wore number 18 at LSU, which is a big deal for anyone who's not aware. Like, that's like a sign of honor. It's a number that's passed on. I think he wore it 2 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. It means that he is the leader of that defense. He's a high character guy. He's just a very motivational guy. If you see him talking about recovering from his situation, and he's very driven. I loved this pick because, again, this is a talent that I would have had no problem, frankly, taking at 88 or maybe even at 56 if we had been wiped out before. And the fact that we got him in the 5th round, I understand the spinal surgery is scary, and whenever you say spinal fusion,
yeah, because he had a herniated disc, I believe, is what it was.
Yeah, it's scary. But if you can get this guy to recover, and it sounds like the Cowboys, medical team seems confident that he will recover. It's one of those situations where you feel that you feel like he if this is something that can be recovered through hard work, if hard work in your recovery means anything, that this guy's going to do whatever it takes to work himself back into shape and to be ready to play. If not at the end of this year, then definitely by next season.
And I think that's partly why the Cowboys felt comfortable here, as they felt not only was the player really good, but the character is really good. So we just don't have to worry about that. Like, if he's healthy, this might be a starter for you. And if it only costs you a 5th round pick, why not? Now, this is back-to-back years the Cowboys have taken a linebacker kind of coming out of college that has some durability concerns. But when you're in the 4th and 5th round, again, it's not a big deal. Like, I get the sense, and I could be wrong, that the Cowboys maybe are looking at the linebacker position differently now than they did a few years ago, right? Like, Micah is different. He's a pass rusher, whatever. But I think the off-the-ball guys, I just don't think they're interested in paying those guys a ton of money after they got burned by Jalen, because I think they know they can be up and down and they don't last very long. So grab guys on day 3, sign guys to 1-year deals like you did with Leighton Vander Esch, and then just kind of move guys in and out. And if you can get 2 guys on rookie contracts that you feel good about, like Cox and Damone Clark, I think you're ahead of the game.
The position has a heavy level of attrition. I mean, running back next to running back, it may be the most, physically demanding position. Jalen Smith worked insanely hard to get back to even being on the football field, played basically 1 season of high-level football before his body already started breaking back down again. So I tend to agree. I think that these guys, they kind of need to be rotated out, sort of like running backs. You just keep them coming. Just keep them coming, because their body's going to take a ton of punishment throughout the season. Their careers aren't going to last very long. And it's why, when people like Bobby Wagner come out, that a lot of teams weren't necessarily chomping at the bit to get him, because those guys their games can fall off a cliff very suddenly. Yep. And not that Bobby Wagner is going to necessarily do that, but you just never know, right? You just never know when their bodies are just not able to keep up there. So keep those linebackers coming. And it feels like, once again, the Cowboys got an incredible value in the day 3 for a guy that coming out of LSU, no less, that you felt like could have been a day 2 pick at linebacker position. I don't know that trend's going to stop. I feel like you're going to be able to consistently get high-level linebackers later in day 3, maybe moving forward, just because there's so many of them.
Yep. It's probably should be expected that Damone Clark's going to be on the NFI list, right? Yeah. So he's not going to play I would be shocked if he plays this year. We'll see. I know Stephen Jones is optimistic, but I think it actually makes a lot of sense to long-term. You put him on the NFI list. You just don't worry about him this year. We'll see what he looks like in training camp next year. But are you worried about the Cowboys' overall linebacker depth right now? Because they have Leighton Vander Esch, Micah Parsons, who's going to play multiple positions, Jabril Cox coming off an injury, and then it's pretty shallow the rest of the way.
No, because I think you can go get some more veteran linebackers. And again, linebacker is a position that you can get that kind of LB 3 and 4 off the street. If that's right.
I wonder, if Vander Esch went down, did they sign KJ Wright in week 2 if they needed to?
Yeah. If they needed to, they can. Or listen, let's look what cuts are going to look like. Yeah. Post 53-man roster cut down, there might be some linebackers available.
Well, and we should also remember, J-Ron Curse is really a linebacker for this team. Yeah. They're going to play one traditional linebacker, and then J-Ron Curse is that kind of the nickel guy, right? So how often do you need 2 traditional off-the-ball linebackers on the field like Leighton Vander Esch and Jabril Cox? And you're probably only talking about 30 to 35% of the snaps. And in that case, it's probably going to be Parsons and Vander Esch or Parsons and Cox, right?
Yeah, I think that, the Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken, played as little base as anybody in the league. I think they were one of the heaviest nickel teams in the entire league. And again, even in that situation, one of those linebackers was a safety. So I do think that, they are going to rely on kind of the interchangeability there. McCool is another guy there who I think you're not. He's a safety, but I think you might see him some more kind of mixing into that role. So I think that these kind of box safety type players are going to mix in there. The true linebacker position is kind of a fluid situation when you have these kind of players on your roster. And this is just, like I said, a team that doesn't play base defense very often. So you're just not going to need 3 linebackers on the field very, very much. So I think that if they need more guys, they can go sign a veteran guy, someone who can give you 10 to 15 snaps a game. But I think you need to be careful there because honestly, if you go sign a veteran guy, you need to make sure that all these other guys are playing special teams because you're already dealing with Damone Clark, who's probably not going to play this year. Jabril Cox is coming back, but he was kind of an up and down special teams player from what we remember last year. He got hurt on
special teams.
Yeah, and so I think that you just need to make sure that you're keeping an eye towards your special teams units if you're bringing in a veteran guy and you've got a guy on a redshirt year and you got a guy coming off injury and you got Micah Parsons who is not going to play special teams.
Yep. All right, that is it for today's show. Tomorrow, we're going to finish up our draft review by talking about a couple more late-round picks the Cowboys made. John Ridgeway. We're going to talk about Devin Harper, a linebacker they drafted, and then a corner, Deron Bland. By the way, I was looking at the Cowboys cornerback depth chart right now. Did you know that all of their numbers are single digits now?
Yes, I noticed that they just changed all of them, and it all just happened at once. It's just crazy.
Calvin Joseph is 1, Jordan Lewis is 2, Anthony Brown is 3, Donovan Wilson is 4, and Trevon Diggs is 7. Donovan Wilson 6, and Trevon Diggs is 7. It's kind of funny.
Just eating up those early numbers, aren't they? They cornered the poor equipment manager and made him give away all the single digits.
I love it. It's fantastic. It's gonna look so awkward out there when Malik Hooker at number 28 is playing in secondary. So
yeah, it is.
All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. You can also check us out on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. Follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.